Now, 5 people who were arrested yesterday after a protest at Rishi Sunak's home in North Yorkshire have been released on bail. 4 of the Greenpeace activists used ladders and climbing ropes to reach the roof of the manor house before the 200-square-metre piece of fabric was unveiled. A 5th activist, who did not scale the roof, was later arrested on suspicion of causing a public nuisance in connection with the protest. And all 5, as I say, have been released on bail. Well, joining me now from Chepstow in Monmouthshire is Professor Rupert Read. He's the co-founder of Climate Majority Project and a former Extinction Rebellion spokesperson. And here with me in the studio is Areeba Hamid, who's co-executive director of Greenpeace UK. So welcome to both of you. Areeba Hamid, to you first of all, obviously we've got to be a little bit careful because there's now an ongoing case, a legal case involving this. But generally, Greenpeace wanted to make a point, a political point, but is this really the right way to go about it, climbing onto somebody's private house?
I think it is a proportionate response to a disastrous decision. I mean, Rishi Sunak really backed this personally. This is personal. And climate change and its impacts are also felt personally. I mean, people were in Greece when ash was falling on their holiday dinners. They were being evacuated by armies. This is personal. He took a personal stance. He chose that, as Prime Minister, he chose to back 100 new oil and gas licenses in the North Sea at a time where we are feeling these impacts. So this was a proportionate response to that decision.
But this is a family home. A family home's now fair game for climate activists.
It was an empty home. The fact that he wasn't there was actually national news. Everybody knows that he wasn't there. We made sure, in fact, we wouldn't have done it if he was there, because our intention was to draw attention to the fact that what he's doing on climate is actually a big disaster, rather than to talk about, his family or where he lives. So that was the entire point. Security is a big part of whatever we do. We planned it carefully, meticulously. We knew he wasn't going to be there. We knocked on the door to make sure that there was nobody there. Initially, there was no response. Then we got a response. We told them who we were. So this was quite a peaceful, calm thing to make a very important point.
OK. Professor Read, as I said in our introduction, you were part of Extinction Rebellion, but as I understand it, you left because you felt their methods were perhaps too polarising. What's your view of incidents like this, where protesters do climb onto the roof of a private home?
Yeah, so what we think in the Climate Majority Project is that the alarm kind of has been successfully raised on climate. And the most important thing to do now is for the concerned, moderate, mostly silent majority to assert themselves and to take action in communities, workplaces, wherever we can within the law, to actually get ourselves moving in the right direction on this absolutely vital issue. And yes, I think it's fair to say that it's clear that there have been times in the past and in the recent past when Extinction Rebellion and also, of course, Just Stop Oil have made mistakes, frankly, in what they have targeted. I wouldn't, however, say that about this particular action. I think that Areeba is basically right. So it seems to me that the test that needs to be passed is this. Is the action justifiable, and does it make sense to members of the public? And I think it's justifiable because, as Greenpeace have said, this is very clearly a policy of maxing out every last drop from the North Sea, a totally criminally irresponsible policy that Rishi Sunak has endorsed. And I think it makes sense for exactly the same reason, that this is a house, one of many houses that Rishi Sunak, I like to call him Richie Sunak, has. And they knew it was empty. And it's a way of making very, very clear the great dissatisfaction that the majority have with the policies of our government on this issue, which is going to be the issue which our children and our grandchildren, frankly, will judge us on if we fail them on it. And right now, this government, led absolutely from the front on this issue by Sunak, is chronically failing.
But Areeba Hamid, what about some of those other protests? A lot of protests going on from different groups who are concerned about the environment. But is there a risk that people who might agree with the message really don't like the methods? Are you concerned that you're turning people off your message with the way you go about it?
See, protests are disruptive by nature. For the amount of comments that we have received, say, online, saying we don't agree with you, we have equal amount of people saying this was brilliant, you made your point, it was peaceful, it didn't disrupt normal people's everyday lives, you took it to the home of the decision maker. So there are both kinds of opinions. Also, it's important to remember that this is just one tactic that organizations like Greenpeace use. I often describe Greenpeace as a Swiss Army knife. We do research. We just won an oceans treaty after 20 years of campaigning that engaged with politicians. We produced research, we took ships out, we did direct action. So it's a part of a longer campaign. And I think the point that we want to make is Rishi Sunak needs to be held accountable for this decision, and we need to hold politicians accountable when they make terrible decisions like these.
OK, and Rupert Read, do you think the message is actually heard? There are headlines today about this story, but is the actual message about the environment being heard, or is it more discussion about what kind of disruption is caused? And I refer not just to this case, but to lots of other cases.
Well, of course, that's a question of how it's framed. So you on Sky have chosen to frame this as a question about, are these tactics justified? I would say an even more important question is, has the government gone too far this time? Have Sunak and Shapps
had many
gone too
times
far?
on the channel. I should just interject and say, obviously, that's an issue that we've talked about with politicians all week, but do go ahead.
Yes, but my point is that the real issue here is precisely the issue that Greenpeace were seeking to bring, and it seems to me successfully brought to the nation yesterday, which is the government going too far when they say we are going to get every last drop of oil out of the North Sea? And it is absolutely clear that they are going too far. So take, for example, what the International Energy Agency have said. This is an official, mainstream, very conservative body. They have said if there is further oil and gas drilling, then there is no way we can make our climate targets. So according to the IEA, this government are going way too far. That's actually the main thing that we should focus on, regardless of whether or not one would undertake this kind of protest. So the Climate Majority Project, we wouldn't engage in this kind of protest activity ourselves. But what we think is that it is pretty clear to anyone who understands the issue at all, and it's going to be pretty clear to vast swathes of the public why an action like this is reasonable, frankly, under the circumstances, where it's absolutely essential that a clear line in the sand is drawn and that people understand the absolutely extreme nature of the policies of this government. Policies, by the way, that Labour have not pledged to reverse. So we're in a very bad situation in our politics here, where neither mainstream party is actually saying we are not going to go ahead with further drilling in the North Sea.
OK. And as I say, we've had those politicians on both sides talking about this issue.
Let us on to debate them, Anna. Let us on to debate this with them.
OK, maybe we'll try and arrange that.
Great.
But for the moment, we are out of time. Professor Rupert Read and Areeba Hamid, good to talk to you both. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you.